Mom, I just won the lottery. 800 million. I need the apartment cleared. That was the first thing out of his mouth. No hello, no pause, just that. I was standing by the copier at work, the old one that smells faintly like burnt dust when it overheats. I remember that because it was whining while my whole life cracked open. I laughed. A quick one? Automatic. You're joking, I told him. I honestly thought this was one of his dumb stress jokes. He'd done that before. I'm not. His voice sounded trimmed, like he'd already cut parts of me out. The ticket's been verified, pending paperwork. But it's real. Agents are calling, banks too. I went cold. Not dramatic cold. Just empty. Like someone turned the volume down inside my chest. So why are you calling me? I asked. My hand was shaking, and I tucked it into my pocket like that might fix it. I need the apartment clear. Today. He didn't rush the words. He placed them. I'm selling it. I'm buying somewhere else. I need a clean break. I leaned against the wall because my knees kind of forgot their job. That's our home, I muttered. I hated how small my voice sounded. 60 years old and still shrinking when he talked fast. It's in my name, he replied. Flat, practiced. This isn't personal. It's just timing, I swear. If someone told me that word could feel like a slap, I wouldn't have believed them until then. I wanted to remind him who paid the mortgage when his freelance years turned into nothing. I wanted to remind him who skipped vacations, who covered late fees, who slept on the couch when he needed space. I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I wanted to see how far he'd go if I didn't interrupt. I've got papers ready, he added. We'll go over it tonight. There was a beep in my ear. He'd already hung up. I stood there staring at the copier light blinking red. People walked past me. Someone asked if I was okay. I nodded. I always nod. Quick aside, if you've ever felt yourself getting fired from your own life, you know that exact hum in your ears. My name is Nadine, 60 years old. By the time I went back to my desk, I already knew this wasn't just about money, it was about permission. And somehow, he thought he'd just gotten it. He called again an hour later, not to apologize, not to check if I'd eaten, to clarify logistics. I've been looking at places. He went on, like we were discussing paint colors. Outside the city. Quieter. New start. I asked him where I was supposed to go. There was a pause. Short. Calculated. Just for a bit. He replied, This doesn't have to be dramatic. That word again. Like drama only existed on my side of the line. I still live there, I reminded him. My clothes are there. My mail. My life. He exhaled. I could hear irritation tightening his breath. Mom. It's temporary. You're acting like this is permanent. I wanted to laugh. I didn't. My mouth felt stiff. You already decided, I muttered. Well, yeah, no hesitation. That's what happens when things change. Not money, not the lottery, just the changes he considered necessary. He kept talking about square footage, about how the new place wouldn't really fit two people, about needing freedom, space, like I was furniture that no longer matched. The house is in my name, he added. Sharper now. Legally, I checked. I knew that. I'd known it for years. I'd trusted him when he told me it was easier that way, when he said paperwork was just paperwork. I paid most of it anyway. Month after month, quiet transfers. No receipts kept. That was my mistake, one of many. You always wanted control. He went on. This is me taking mine back. Control. From who I almost asked. I didn't. Here's the part I hate admitting. I still tried to soften it. I told him I'd figure something out. I told him we could talk tonight. I told him I understood. He didn't thank me. Good, he replied. Then we're aligned. Aligned. Like a deal had just closed. He hung up again. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, feeling stupid for thinking love worked like insurance. Pay in long enough. and you're covered. Quick break if you've ever realized trust can turn into leverage without warning. You know that drop in your stomach. When I stood up to leave work early, my badge clinked against the desk. Small sound, heavy meaning. I already knew the next conversation wouldn't be about whether I was leaving. It would be about how fast. The house smelled like lemon cleaner when I walked in. Too clean. Like someone had been preparing for company. I dropped my bag by the door and saw the folder on the kitchen counter. White. Thick. Realtor logo in the corner. I knew that logo. I'd seen it on yard signs around the block. I opened it, standing up. No ceremony. Purchase agreement. Contingent sale. Buyer I didn't recognize. Real deposit clipped to the back, not pocket change. Enough to make everything feel official, even though it wasn't final yet. I flipped pages fast. Hands clumsy. My name wasn't anywhere. Not even as a courtesy mention. Just his, clean and confident across the signature line. He came in behind me while I was still reading. You found it, he noted. Like I'd discovered leftovers in the fridge. You already took a deposit, I murmured. My voice sounded far away. You didn't even tell me. He shrugged out of his jacket. There wasn't time. The buyer wanted assurance. They believe the money's clearing. Believe, I repeated. So nothing's finalized. It will be. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Once the lottery commission finishes their process, that phrase again. Process. Everything was a process now, except me. So you planned this, I muttered. Not accusing. Just connecting dots. I didn't want connected. He didn't deny it. I needed to move fast. Opportunity doesn't wait. I laughed once. It came out wrong. You waited 15 years. His jaw tightened. I waited long enough. There it was. The truth slipping through before he could polish it. I tapped the deposit receipt with my finger. You put my life on contingency. He looked at me like I was exaggerating. You'll land somewhere, you always do. That hurt more than the papers. Here's the part I didn't expect. I still asked. You really thought I wouldn't notice, he smiled. Thin and tired. I thought you'd understand. Quick aside, if you've ever realized someone counted on your silence as consent. You know that particular sting. It's sharp, then dull, then sharp again. I closed the folder and slid it back where it had been. Neat and untouched. If this was planned, then tonight wasn't about discussion. It was about execution. He picked up his phone. Already halfway gone. We'll go over the rest later. I watched him walk out of the kitchen like the decision was finished. And maybe it was, just not in the way he thought. He waited until after dinner. No rush. Like he'd scheduled it. We should go over this now. He started, sliding the envelope across the table with 2 fingers, not looking at me, looking past me. That was new. I didn't touch it. You already went over it on the phone. This is different. He straightened the stack. This is paperwork. I opened the envelope anyway. Voluntary occupancy release. My name typed clean. No threats. No eviction language. A supposed choice that left me no room. You want me gone tonight? I murmured. I need the place clear. He rubbed his forehead like I was the problem he'd been dealing with all day. You're slowing things down. That landed harder than the lottery line. I lived here before you, I told him. My voice stayed even, which surprised me. I paid for most of it. He didn't flinch. Legally. It's mine. We both knew that. We trusted each other. I replied. He let out a breath. Sharp. Controlled. Trust doesn't scale when things change. Change. Always that word. Like money rewrites history. I'm not throwing you out, he added. You're choosing to leave. I looked up at him then. Really looked. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cruel. He was efficient. Like he'd already moved on emotionally and just needed me to catch up. You already prepared all this, I muttered. Before you even called me. He nodded once. I had to be ready. He was ready to erase me from the home. And I could feel it in the way he moved. I signed nothing yet, just sat there with the papers open, my name staring back like it belonged to someone else. He checked his watch. I've got calls to make. Agents don't wait. Agents don't. Quick break. This is the moment where you realize no one is pushing you physically. They're just removing every place you can stand. I'll pack, I told him. Good. Relief flashed across his face. Gone just as fast. That makes this easier. He stood up. Already done. I stayed seated, hands flat on the table, understanding something clearly for the first time. This wasn't about forcing me out. It was about replacing me without friction. I sat at the table with the papers spread out like a quiet dare. I read every line, slowly, not because I didn't understand them, but because I needed to know exactly how cleanly I was being cut loose. No eviction language. No deadlines that could be challenged. Just my agreement to leave. Voluntary. Calm, polite. You're taking this well, he remarked from across the table. I'm taking it accurately, I replied. He shifted in his chair. I could tell he'd expected tears. Maybe bargaining. I gave him neither. I'd spent too many years explaining myself to stop now. Once you sign, the buyer's more comfortable, he went on. It shows cooperation. Cooperation. Like I was part of the plan instead of the obstacle. I picked up the pen. It felt heavier than it should have. Cheap plastic, blue ink. I hesitated. Just long enough for him to notice. You don't have to drag this out, he muttered. I signed my name, full, legible, no shaky letters. I surprised myself with that part. There was a small pause. Not silence. More like a breath the room was holding. I slid the papers back toward him and looked up. Enjoy your winning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. Just stated it like a closing remark at the end of a long meeting. For a second, he looked confused. Then he laughed. Short, sharp, almost relieved. I will, he replied. Trust me. Quick aside, this is the moment people imagine you regret later, the calm one, the one where you don't fight. I swear, I thought about yelling, about throwing the pen, about ripping the pages in half. I didn't. Not because I was strong, because I was tired, and because something in me wanted to see what happened next if I didn't interfere. He gathered the papers like trophies and stood up, already texting someone, probably the agent. Probably celebrating. I stayed at the table, staring at the ink drying on my name. Not angry, not broken, just oddly clear. Whatever this was turning into, I knew one thing. I wasn't done yet. The first crack showed up on my phone. Not from him, a local news alert. Small headline. Easy to miss. I read it twice anyway. Lottery Commission delays payouts after verification issues. Purchase irregularities under review. I didn't react. Not yet. I folded a shirt, then another, muscle memory stuff. Like my hands could keep me steady if my head stayed quiet. He came into the room mid-scroll, buzzing with energy. They're just being thorough, he blurted, like he needed to beat the silence. Happens all the time. I nodded. Sure. He stopped. You don't believe me. I believe paperwork, I replied. Eventually, he scoffed. They already verified the ticket. Pending. I corrected. I hadn't meant to. It slipped out. The word hung there. Sharp. His jaw tightened. You're reading too much into it. A notification chimed on his phone, then another. He turned his screen away from me too fast. Bank's just double-checking timelines, he muttered. No big deal. Funds are frozen. I offered. Gentle. Not helpful, just accurate. They don't freeze money that's real, he snapped. Then caught himself. I mean, temporarily. We stood there, facing each other like strangers negotiating a delay at the airport. Same destination. No boarding pass yet. A few minutes later, his agent called. I recognized the ringtone because he'd played it earlier like a trophy. This time, he stepped outside to answer. I heard fragments through the door. Flagged. Compliance. We need documentation. When he came back in, his confidence had lost its shine. Not gone. Just dented. They're sorting it out, he insisted. Louder now. I did everything right. I watched him pace. Fast steps. No rhythm. His fantasy had been sprinting ahead of the facts, and the facts were finally catching up. Quick aside, this is the strange part. I didn't feel relief. I felt suspended, like the floor hadn't dropped yet, but it was no longer solid. He grabbed his keys. I'm heading out. To where I asked, anywhere that isn't this. He replied, already gone. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand, the news alert still glowing. Nothing had collapsed. Not officially, but nothing felt certain anymore. The call came in the morning. Not from him, from the buyer's agent. Her voice was tight, professional, already halfway out the door. I need to let you know the sale is off. The funding collapsed. I didn't pretend to be surprised. Because of the lottery. Yes, a pause. The commission voided the ticket. Void. Gone entirely, no delay, no pending. Just gone. I thanked her and ended the call. My hands were steady. That surprised me more than the news. He stormed in an hour later, phone pressed to his ear, face flushed. This doesn't make sense. He barked at whoever was unlucky enough to be listening. They can't just erase it. He noticed me then. Stopped pacing. Did you hear I did? They're wrong, he snapped. I followed the rules. The commission doesn't argue feelings, I replied. He dragged a hand through his hair. The bank pulled the financing temporarily. After the buyer walked, I added. His eyes flicked away. He hated that I knew before he told me. They're overreacting, he muttered. This'll get sorted. Another notification hit his phone, then another. He stared at the screen longer this time. They canceled the deposit, he whispered. The word canceled sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. I watched him sink onto the couch, shoulders collapsing inward. The man who'd been giving orders 2 days ago now looked smaller, not punished, just exposed. I didn't move. I didn't comfort him. I didn't gloat either. I stayed where I was and let the silence do the work. They can't do this, he muttered again. I already made plans. I thought of the papers, the pen, my name drying in blue ink. Plans. He'd had plenty of those. Quick aside, this is the moment people expect a victory smile. I didn't feel one. Watching someone unravel isn't satisfying when you helped hold them together once. His phone rang again. He ignored it. The future he'd announced with such certainty hadn't even made it past the doorway. I went to the bank the next morning, early, before he woke up, before I could talk myself out of it. The loan officer was a woman about my age. Practical shoes. No small talk. She pulled up my file and nodded like she already knew how this would go. You've been here a long time, she noted, scrolling. No late payments. Stable income. I don't need mercy. I told her. I need numbers. She gave a half smile. That's fine. Numbers like you. We went through it, line by line. Mortgage history, transfers. The years I covered the bulk of it without my name on the deed. Not smart. But consistent. Consistency counts. The buyer withdrew. She added. Clean exit, I know. She paused. You want to purchase outright, I want it done, I replied. My voice didn't shake. That felt new. We talked terms, interest, timeline. Nothing dramatic. No favors. Just math. Milwaukee isn't a fantasy market. Houses don't triple overnight. People still live in them. That helped. She printed the documents and slid them across. If you're comfortable, I was. That surprised me too. I signed again, different pen. Heavier paper. My name looked steadier this time, like it had practice. When I left, my phone buzzed. His name. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, because I was busy. By afternoon, the house was legally mine. Quietly. No announcement. No victory lap. I came home and put the folder in the drawer where we used to keep manuals. Washer, dryer, things meant to last. He walked in later. Eyes red, jaw tight. Where were you taking care of something? I replied. He scoffed. You don't need to hide things now. I don't. I answered. And for once, I meant it. Quick break. This is where people expect fireworks. There weren't any. Just a strange calm. Like the floor finally remembered how to hold weight. I stood in the kitchen and felt it settle. Not triumph. Stability. Whatever came next. I wasn't floating anymore. I waited until evening, not for drama. For quiet. He came in fast, already talking. This isn't over. The commission messed up. My lawyer. The house is mine now, I told him. He stopped mid-step, blinked, laughed once. Sharp and empty. That's not funny. I went to the bank. I continued. Same tone I use with customer service reps. Calm. Clear. The buyer withdrew. I bought it back. It's done. His face drained, then flushed. You can't do that. I already did. He stepped closer. Too close. You planned this. I reacted. I replied, there's a difference. His voice climbed. Fast. You signed the papers. You agreed to leave. I agreed to leave a house you owned, I answered. You don't own it anymore. He shook his head hard, like that could rearrange facts. You're ruining my life. I let that hang. Then I repeated his words back to him, exactly as he'd given them to me. Pack your things. Silence. Thick. He stared at me like I'd switched languages. You don't mean that, he muttered. I do. The anger came next. Loud, messy, accusations flying everywhere, control, betrayal, how I'd always held him back. I didn't interrupt. Then the panic. I've got nowhere to go. I nodded. You'll land somewhere. You always do. That one landed. I saw it. Quick break. This is the moment where you realize boundaries don't feel powerful. They feel awful. Necessary, but awful. He tried one last time. Softer. I'm your son, I know. I replied. That's why I waited. I walked to the door and held it open. My hand didn't shake. He grabbed a bag. No plan. No speech. Just noise and footsteps fading. When the door closed, the house stayed quiet. Not relieved. Just firm. And for the first time in days, I trusted the ground under me. He didn't call. He didn't text. He just left. I stayed. Sat at the kitchen table with the papers stacked beside me, edges still warm from my hands. The house sounded different without him. Not empty, just settled. I made coffee I didn't finish. I looked at the chair he always kicked back with his heel. Didn't fix it. Didn't need to. Here's the part I keep thinking about. Money didn't turn him into someone else. It just gave him permission to stop pretending, and I didn't lose a son overnight. I lost the version of him I kept protecting in my head. Life lesson. Plain and ugly trust is not a substitute for boundaries. Love doesn't cancel paperwork, and stability isn't something you inherit. You build it quietly, over years. Even when no one's watching. If this story hit close to home, tap like, leave a comment, or subscribe. I read them, I really do. I rinsed my cup, turned off the light, locked the door, the house held. So did I.